Go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. My guest today, Dr. Paul Ashley. He is from Anonyome. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks, Rocco. Great to be here today.
I get such a kick out of it when I can say there's a doctor on the pod, a real doctor. And then we're going to get stuck into a bit of digital identity and security. I think first off the bat, you've got this extensive history and experience in the industry. How has sort of the personal privacy threats changed since when you did your PhD and like where we are now?
Yeah, I think it's changed a lot over the last 20 years. I think it's actually, I would say, almost exponentially worse now. And let me explain what I mean by that. The thing that's really changed in the last 20 years on the internet is this sort of concentration, centralization with these big players. So you have these Metas and you have the Googles and the Twitter and the LinkedIn, and even companies like Apple who are, supposedly more privacy sensitive. But what that concentration has done is that they're able to view the internet as a whole and really suck up all of your digital interactions, right? They call this surveillance capitalism. What those companies really want to do is they really want to understand everything that you're doing online. So everything you do online, every account you have, everywhere you go, what you buy, what you look at, they want to know all of that, right? And so I think that's the big change in the last 20 years. So I think privacy has actually got a lot worse in those 20 years because of that concentration with those big players.
Before you go on, why do they want to do that? Why do you think?
It's their revenue model. If you go to someone like Google, and you look at what their revenue is, it's something, I don't know, 96% to do with advertising dollars, right? So the more they know about you, the higher price they can charge for advertising because people who advertise with them understand that they'll get a return for that. So it's really about that. It's really about that advertising dollar. And a lot of these companies, that's all they exist on, right? Is knowing about you and selling that information. That's all it is.
Have you ever noticed sometimes when you browse, I think we've all done it, you browse something or you think about something or you talk to your wife or you talk to your brother, and the next moment you open up Google and there it is. I'm looking for maybe a fridge or a new set of golf clubs. I mean, is that sort of what we're talking about?
That's what we're talking about. It's that they know so much about you, and maybe and we all have those experiences. Like you open up your browser and you get the thing that you were just thinking about or talking about, and there's obviously been a way for them to capture some data about you, about something you're interested in. And so what do? They now position those products in front of you because they know so much about you. And if you think about Google, like it produces excellent products, right? Like and it's free. And the reason is to attract you to do as much with them as possible because, again, they're getting every piece of information about you possible.
Just think about using a Gmail account. It's free. All your personal stuff comes in. There's no way that they don't have access to that data. Basically, we're just giving it to them.
100%. And all the emails are coming in the clear. You're sending notes in the clear. So they know every service, your interaction. They know your personal thing, your commercial thing, if you're using it for government interaction. And this is why, for example, we created the MySudo app. So you have these multiple personas to try to stop that centralization.
Okay. And we're going to get to that. Before we get to that, I wanted to speak about this thing that you call decentralized identity, because I've never heard of it. We all know what decentralization is, but what is a decentralized identity?
Yeah, I think this is it could be the most important technology for privacy and security for the next 10 years. I'll probably need to give you a bit of history, Rocco, about where it came from.
Yeah, I'm going to sit back and listen.
Yeah, it didn't come out of nowhere. So if you go back to the 90s, right, all interaction on the internet was what they call centralized. And what that meant is you'd go to a website, You create an account, a username, password, you give them a bunch of personal data, and then you could access that service, right?
Yeah.
And then you do it over and over again. And we all know we have something like 200 accounts in our password managers if we're using one. And it just shows you how widely distributed your information is across the internet. So that's what they typically call the centralized model. Then if you go to the early 2000s, right, a new model came in, and you've heard of things like login with Google, login with Facebook.
Yes.
It's what they call social login, right? They call that federated. They've got federated model. And what that means is instead of creating username passwords on all these services, you go to a service and you say, oh, I'll log in with Google. They redirect you over to Google, you log in, you come back with a token. And Google is what they call the identity provider.
Yeah, it says this is me,
provider.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you click a button.
And so that's right. And it's very simple for a user. The benefit for a user is very simple, not so much to manage. But from a privacy point of view, I said centralized is really bad. You've got all your data all over the internet. Think of federated as actually a lot worse, because now what you're doing is you're allowing these big players like a Google to have connections to all the accounts that you've got. And they pass information backward and forward with each other. So Google will give that service some information. The service can report back on what you're doing to Google. So it's actually a worse privacy situation. So that's where the world has been for the last, let's say, 20 years, right? Either centralized or federated. And all your privacy's gone. People are selling your data. People are stealing your data. You can see it on the news every night. There's a new, 1.8 million accounts here end up on the dark web with your credit card and all that.
Yeah.
So now we go to decentralized. So that's the background of where decentralized identity came from. And the idea here is you have an identity wallet. Okay. And in that wallet, you hold information about you, really your identities. So you might have more than one identity in there. And what does that mean? It's things like cryptographic keys, things called verifiable credentials, right, or reusable credentials in your wallet. And the idea is that technology allows you to interact with sites in a much more private and secure way. There's no more passwords anymore. Everything's done through private public key cryptography. And the way you interact is through these credentials. And I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
You get in the US at the moment, there's about 20 US states in the process of issuing what they call digital driver's license or mobile driver's license, MDL. Yeah. What that means is, and I'll give you an example, California, they'll give you an app, which is what they call an identity wallet app. They will put that driver's license in that app. When you go and turn up physically, say at a bar, and you need to prove you're over 21 there, right, you present that digital driver's license. But this is where the privacy capabilities come in. You can just prove that you're over 21 without giving all the rest of the information on your driver's license, like what's your home address and the fact that you wear glasses and all that. So there's this technology within this scope called selective disclosure, which says, I want to do something. I just need, there might be 20 fields in this credential, like a driver's license usually has like 20 different pieces of information, but I only want to give you my photo and my birthday. And that's what they call selective disclosure. And you can do, that's something you can do with an electronic version that you can't do with a physical. Yeah. But then there's even better technologies like zero knowledge proofs where you can say, I can prove that I'm over 21 or I can prove I'm from this state without actually telling you what the birth date is or what state you live in. And so or your address. Yeah. So it's this new technology. And the idea is you're making connections with sites, you're presenting credentials to them, they're issuing you new credentials. And you've got this paradigm where you're really trying to control what personal data you're giving and to who. And you're getting away from things like federated single sign-on and using passwords and all that. So it's a new technology that's out there. And I'll talk to you a bit about what's happening in Europe. So
yeah, please.
They've got this legislation called IDAS, right, which is really about digital identities across Europe, and it's all decentralized identity based. So they've now asked every country in Europe to produce an identity wallet. So I was just in a conference in Europe, and Germany, for example, is shortlisted to 6 vendors now for their wallet. So each of those countries has to produce a wallet, an identity wallet that has these capabilities. Then every country in Europe has to issue a verifiable credential, which is a national ID credential, into that wallet. So within 2 years, there's going to be 450 million verifiable credentials or reusable credentials, whatever term you want to use, or digital credentials into those wallets. So users in Europe within 2 years will have a wallet, they'll have a national ID credential, and then they'll go and use that, for example, to get an electronic driver's license, to get a passport, even to do things like get a gym membership, to buy things online by presenting the driver's license and things like that. So this is a new world we're going into. And the reason Anonyme got involved with it, because we do see it as sort of a technology that aids with kind of security and privacy and your identity.
Yes. Devil's advocate question. That wallet said that it saved the German government in I don't want to piss off the Germans too much.
Yes.
We see what happened last time that happened. Um, would it be able for the German government to use that wallet against you in a certain way?
No, I think the answer is no, but it is a good point. So
Hmm.
if you're the German government, right, you just put out onto the App Store and the Play Store, you put this mobile app, which is this wallet, and people
Hmm.
download it and they can use it. And let's assume that they're not putting, technology in there to monitor how you're using and where you're using those credentials
Hmm.
and things like that. So, which would be something very easy to be able to spot in a wallet.
Okay.
Where I am a little bit more concerned is Apple and Google are enabling support for decentralized identity and verifiable credentials in
That's
their
it.
wallets. So the
That's
wallets
it.
that we're using for
Yeah.
things like I'm about to do a flight. I want to get my boarding pass and I put it in my Apple wallet. Right, we're all used to using it, and they're pretty simple sort of
Hmm. Hmm.
capabilities.
Hmm.
Well, those wallets are currently being updated to add this decentralized identity capability so they can take, for example, mobile driver's license and other things. That's probably where I'm a little bit more concerned because, those wallets are a little bit more under the cover in the operating systems for iOS and for
Hmm.
Android. And do we really know what information they're capturing about your use in those wallets? So
No.
I would be more hesitant to use sort of the Apple and Google wallet. But
Hmm.
if I was to get a wallet from a German government, I'm probably more sure that it's okay. Or you could get one from a private company. There's lots of wallets out there now that you can get from private
Okay.
companies. Those companies, and even a country like Germany, can't afford to be eavesdropping on what you're doing. It wouldn't take much for that to be outed
No.
and that to be disclosed. I think it's more difficult when the wallet is built into the operating system, like the Apple Wallet or the Google Wallet.
You talked about MySudo. I think now it's a perfect time to drop into that and something that allows you to manage multiple identities. How does that work? It's your
Yes.
proprietary product, right?
Yeah, it's a product. So let me give you the history of that. So when we it was when we first started Anonyme, we said, we'd come from an enterprise security background where we're used to things like web proxies and other sorts of proxies and things to protecting, users in their company from going out to the internet. So
Mm-hmm.
what we thought about is, could we bring that proxy idea to normal users, everyday users? And so what does it mean of a proxy, an identity proxy? It says, well, we said, rather than you taking out your personal identity with your personal email address and your
Mm-hmm.
mobile phone number and your plastic credit card and using a single browser for everything, what about if you could create a whole bunch of these personas, effectively identity proxies for you to take out to the internet? So what MySudo allows you to do is create up to 9 of these personas, and with each of them, create new phone numbers, new email addresses. You can create virtual credit cards. You can have a different browser for each persona. And I'll give you an example. So
Yeah.
I've got 9 myself, and one of them is a travel persona.
Okay.
So, I said I've just come back from a trip through the US and Europe, and I use
Yes.
this travel persona everywhere. So every hotel I went to, every airline, rental car, Ubers, whatever I was doing, I would give this travel pseudo. So I'd give them that phone number, that email address, that virtual credit card, all those things there. So all of that was sort of compartmentalized into that persona. And I could track all that. It was really good for managing, but also it meant that none of those organizations had any of my personal details that
Yeah.
they could easily, spam me
Yeah.
and call me and things like that.
Or your wife, for that matter. If I think there's a major gap there, Doctor, but we're not going to go into that one. Um, the last question before I let you leave, you spoke about the European legislation, and you also spoke about you travel all over. You went to the States, and you went to Europe.
Mm.
My question is, are the governments actively engaging you in legislation, asking for input, or is it more of a, hey, this is what we're going to do? How can you participate?
So it's kind of an interesting way to think about that. So
Mm,
it's probably backward and forward. So across the world, there's different legislations,
okay.
and like in Europe, for example, there's a whole lot of legislation called IDAS and EUDI wallet, etc. So they sort of set the high level goals. We want users to have wallets, and we want them to have verifiable credentials. But where the industry comes in, and someone like Anonyme Labs comes in, is we work on the standards that support that. So you need a credential format, you need a credential exchange protocol, you need the blockchain. What blockchain are you going to use that supports under this? Because there's a very much of a blockchain-based technology in that some of the key information that allows the whole thing to operate is existing on the blockchain. So the technologies that are defining blockchain, defining issuer and verifier protocols, and what those credentials actually look like, that's done in the standards group. And I'd say that's how the industry is supporting legislation. It's helping to define the technical standards that support these high-level legislative standards as well.
Do you have any preferences for blockchain?
Wow. So the use of blockchain that we have is around decentralized identity and using it for identity.
Okay.
There's actually a whole bunch of different choices. So if you go into the decentralized identity, there's things like what they call hyperledger indie. There's one out of the UK called Checked, CHEQD, which is another sort of blockchain. There's Bitcoin based, there's Ethereum based.
Yeah.
So think of it that
so many.
There's probably, I would say, maybe 10 different blockchain technologies used within decentralized identity. But in some ways it doesn't matter because they define what these things called DID methods, which are how you interface them for creating identities, for reading it, for creating schemas, and doing all different things on the blockchain. So in fact, the technology to us doesn't matter. If I'm using Hyperledger Indie or Ethereum based, rather, it doesn't kind of matter to us because it's just a place to really to store immutable data. Right, that's what it's for. It's to store data so that, for example, an issuer can put a public key on there. No one can override it. No one can change it. It's there because it's immutable on the blockchain. So to us, the choice of technology for blockchain doesn't matter too much as long as it supports the key requirements of verifiable credentials and decentralized identity.
Excellent answer, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining me today. If the listeners want to go and connect with you and Anonyome Labs, where can they do that?
Just come onto our website. If you look at anonyme.com and have a play around with MySudo. Like, MySudo is something for just everyday users to get the idea of creating multiple personas. I'd say it's a great place to start to understand what it means to protect your digital identity online. Don't go out as one person, go out as a whole range of different identities and change those from time to time.
I love it. I'm going to give it to my wife and her 5 split personalities. Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. And to our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity. And we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Find our peak. We are big. In a world of data where we stand alone, searching for the key to a place called home. We are more than numbers, more than virtual dreams. Rising from the shadows, staring at the seams. In a world of data where we stand alone, searching for the key to a place called home. We are more than numbers, more than virtual dreams. Rising from the shadows, staring at the seams. We are the guardians of our fate. In the cyber world we navigate. Our wallets hold the truth we seek. In this digital age we find our peak. In a world of data where we stand alone, searching for the key to a place called home. We are more than numbers, more than virtual dreams. Rising from the shadows, tearing at the seams. Of our digital souls ringing out from silent codes. In the labyrinth we find our way.